In this episode, David Raiklin joins Golden and I for an in-depth, spoiler-filled discussion of Spider-Man Far From Home. Full speed ahead. Welcome to the Omega Beam number 46. I'm your host, Oren Merton, and we'd like to welcome back last episode's guest, David Raiklin. He joined us for last episode's spoiler-free quick review of Spider-Man Far From Home, and now he's with us for our in-depth, spoiler-filled discussion. So if you haven't seen the movie yet and you don't want any spoilers, then please feel free to go back and listen to the previous episode if you haven't already heard it. And then check this out after you've seen the movie. You'll get a lot more out of the discussion and you won't be spoiled. If you've already seen the movie or if you don't care about spoilers, then enjoy. Here we go. I am here with Golden and David Raiklin. Hello.
Hello. I am so happy to be here.
Thank you. Would you like to introduce yourself a little bit to our audience since you are the official guest?
Yes, I am David Raiklin, DavidRaiklen.com, and I'm a producer, composer, and host. And I've worked in film, TV, video games, and live events. And I am a huge science fiction, fantasy, and superhero nerd, and I loved Spider-Man Far From Home.
Excellent. So we are, if you listen to the spoiler-free podcast, then you've already heard David and Golden and my opinion of how much we enjoyed the movie. So since this is the spoilerific version, let's get into more detail. So what are some of the things that really stuck out to us in the movie?
I'd say that right from the beginning, the movie kind of draws you in to a more intense level than Homecoming. Far From Home definitely is putting Spider-Man into a world that he is not comfortable in and not familiar with. And there was a little bit of that in Homecoming, but this really takes him to a place where you see him kind of growing up before your eyes.
Yeah, yeah.
And
it's
again,
a great way to put it.
There was a little bit of that happening in the previous movie, but now they've kind of like seen how to do that. And he's still the same person. And he's still, Spider-Man, but he's becoming the grown-up version of Spider-Man.
Yeah.
And you see that happening through the whole movie. So yeah, Tom Holland is a terrific actor at portraying all kinds of emotions very authentically and interacting with all the other cast with, each person has their own distinct interaction. So, he's a great professional actor and a great talent. But in this one, instead of being overwhelmed like he was in Endgame, as anybody would be, because, the universe is actually being destroyed and you're supposed to do something about it. Here, he's more mature. He's more in control. Yes, he has problems.
I think he does start out a little bit on overload. Like
he wants a vacation.
He needs a break.
Yes.
But that's just not reality.
Right.
Yeah, he wants to be Peter Parker.
Right.
He's overdosed on being Spider-Man.
Yeah, and I think that's a really interesting comparison. I love to compare superheroes. And one of the things I think is very clear with Batman is that Bruce Wayne is the disguise.
Yes.
That he is Batman. That whatever trauma has subsumed him, it has turned him into Batman, and he has to be Bruce Wayne to allow Batman to happen. Peter Parker, it's the opposite. He wants to be Peter Parker. He is a kid. He wants to have a life. He wants to have a girlfriend. He wants to do 16-year-old boy things. And he's also just happened to waltz into this superhero life because he got bitten by a spider. And while he doesn't want to shirk it off him, he also doesn't want it to control him and to overwhelm him.
That's very well put. And that's one of the levels of tension. And there's many levels of tension. I love that the Mysterio costume was the classic Steve Ditko, even with the cloud of fog in the helmet. It was exactly like Ditko drew it. I don't know if Steve would appreciate it, but I'd like to think that he'd be happy with the portrayal. And of course, his powers are scaled up to be 21st century visual effects.
Right.
Literally.
Yes.
Yeah, and that's a good point. That one of the great themes of this movie, the Marvel movies, I think, and this includes the Sony movies, the MCU movies, whether Marvel Studios or Sony is putting the movie out, I think that while they are on one level completely entertaining, just summer fun, blockbuster, etc., I do think that in a subtle, non-preachy way, they try and address modern issues.
Yes.
And they don't do it by saying, "Hi, my name is Peter Parker, and I think you're all too susceptible to fake news." Instead, they create this wonderful story where an illusionist fools everyone, threatens everyone's lives, and at the very end, they kind of twist the screw by having him say, these days people will believe anything. It's a contemporary problem, the idea of spreading illusion in effect and having people just buy it.
I think that's what was extremely perfect about the extreme ending.
Right.
The very, very end is you have...
Well, there's two extreme
endings,
really.
You have basically a Kree saying, "I can't believe what kind of shapeshifter am I to have bought this?"
Right. And then you have J. Jonah Jameson, who's effectively the InfoWars guy in the Marvel Universe now. They took him from running a newspaper to running InfoWars, in effect.
So is this a multiverse? And then Tobey Maguire... It's Tobey Maguire one, right? Mm-hmm. Tobey Maguire version that the same actor is playing the same character. So is this part of the multiverse where now Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man is an alternate Spider-Verse?
It's very possible. Yes. I read an interview with Tom Holland where he said he would be happy to play Spider-Man alongside Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield also playing Spider-Man. I'm guessing that the specific casting of that actor who played J. Jonah Jameson again, I think that may have been more stunt casting than anything else. That's just my feeling.
Though. I mean, J.K. Simmons is a great actor.
That's the actor's name. I couldn't remember it.
I mean, he can be so funny, but he never breaks character. He's funny because the character is funny.
Right.
And he plays the character very seriously and very straight. When he hates Spider-Man, it's because he really hates Spider-Man. It's just that his degree that he does it is so extreme that it becomes comical.
Right.
And now he has even more reason to.
Yes.
Yeah. So, speaking of the story, I said this in the spoiler-free one, but I can elaborate on it more now. One of the things that I love the most about this movie is that in the middle of this just special effects extravaganza, considering the stories about illusion, that means there's so much, CGI everywhere, and it's done so well and so much action. What really hit me was how emotional just the little love story was. I mean, one of the very few things that I saw, I tried to avoid every spoiler, but I did see one person say that they were really blown away by how romantic the movie was. And it is not in a contrived, let's have a fancy dinner in a nice restaurant with soft music and everyone's well dressed, but just in the intensity and the passion of the people involved. and sort of how rewarding it was after an entire movie of not having those moments, of finally, MJ and Peter have that moment. It's just, I mean, to me, that's at least as exciting, if not more, as the great action.
Yes, it's heartfelt, action-packed, and part of a greater whole at all times. So Spidey can be in the middle of a battle sequence that's full of spectacular effects and amazing stunt moves. And yet there's a beat where he's trying to save Mary Jane.
Right.
That reveals a completely different side of his character, which is what would happen if you were in that. And those subtle tone shifts are a kind of hallmark of the Marvel movies, where they can change tone on a dime and then change right back. And it doesn't seem out of place. It just seems natural. And that's why you can have that heavy action and that tender love story happening at the same time.
Yeah. Yeah. And speaking of subtlety, one of the things that moved me a lot was there's this thread throughout the movie of, is Spider-Man the new Tony Stark? That is he going to take the mantle as the head of the Avengers? And part of that is expressed through the sort of almost paternal relationship between Happy Hogan, who was Tony Stark's best friend, and Peter. And towards the end of the movie, after Hogan picks him up from his near-death battle and gives him sort of the souped-up, computerized back end of the ship to construct a new suit, there's this lovely beat where Peter Parker is hovering over the machine, moving all the virtual components of his suit, putting his hand in the virtual component and pulling it out the same way that Tony Stark built his Iron Man suit. And the way that Jon Favreau, the actor, Happy Hogan, looks at Peter, just the way that Hogan looks at him in that sort of warm smile of, I've seen Tony do this.
And then he caps it off with, what does he cap it off with?
Oh, the song. That's right. Then he plays the song, the AC/DC song, Back in Black, that Tony Stark wrote in on Avengers playing, which was amusing. Of course, they had to get a joke in about.
Tom Holland says he likes Led Zeppelin.
Right, they had to get Tom Holland in there saying, "Oh, I love Led Zeppelin."
Again, any sound effects that you hear of whining, pitter-patter of paws on the hardwood floors, whining, crying, heavy breathing, is provided by the 85-pound giant schnauzer named Drax.
No relation to the character in Guardians of the Galaxy.
Only named after him.
That's right.
Yes. I don't think the Guardians of the Galaxy made an appearance in this movie. But,
no. Though the Kree did.
Yeah, but the Kree did, and so did Tony Stark, and, Happy Hogan. And by the way, this is the most acting I've seen Jon Favreau do in quite a while, and he is as good or better than he's ever been.
I agree. I think that he only had a couple lines in Endgame, but his, cheeseburger exchange with Tony Stark's daughter, it's just
incredibly memorable.
It's heartbreaking. Just, it was just pitch perfect. He's a director now. He's directing a lot. I mean, he's directing the Jungle Book. It's coming, or not the Jungle Book, the Lion King.
Yeah, the new Lion King, which is being, advertised all over.
Yeah, so, certainly he's getting work as a big ticket director, but don't write him off as an actor, because his acting is great.
It is. And, he's the director that really set the blueprint, the template for the Marvel Universe with the first Iron Man, which is an awesome movie. If you haven't seen the first Iron Man in a while, you should go back and see it.
We watched it before Endgame.
Rewatch it recently, and I agree. I mean, it still holds up. 11 years later, it holds up. It really holds up. The MCU as a whole, it's had some clunkers, but its winning streak is just incredible. And I agree with what you said, that this is maybe the most tied in Spider-Man movie to the MCU. And I think it elevates the movie to be part of all that. I mean, they said this is the last movie in Phase 4. And this really does deal with the repercussions.
And here I thought it was part of the next phase.
And it is a little bit. Even maybe more than a little bit. But, I was having a discussion about this, a spoiler-free discussion, that, Marvel always saves the big reveal for the end. They put it off as long as they can. Right. It's like the first appearance of Thanos is in the end credit scene of the first Avengers, which was already a terrific movie. But then the biggest reveal that had the most implications wasn't until the very end. So I think that the same philosophy goes through the whole thing, the whole MCU, all the movies. And this movie has part of Phase 4 in it. But because it's still dealing with Phase 3, they're not going to give away the big plot line that they're building towards. I mean, look how many years went by before we knew that this was going to be, the Infinity Saga.
Right.
It took years of movies, successful movies, before they finally revealed what this was all building towards.
Right.
And they knew. I mean, that wasn't something that was done on the fly like a show like Lost, where, they really didn't know what it was going to be. For a variety of reasons, including that, there's 60 years of canon that they can draw on.
That's
and they
true.
do. That's one of the great things about Marvel that's so different than much of DC, is that Marvel peppers their films with references, characters, places, advanced plot lines.
So did you like the whole, studying elementals and, these things used to be just, myth or whatever. And Peter Parker's like, so was Thor until we're studying him in physics.
Yeah.
Now we study him in physics.
Right. Yeah, that was a great line. So I've talked about things that I've loved. We've talked about things that we've loved. There's very little that I didn't love, but there is one thing that, to me, it wasn't terrible. I understand the purpose and the power of a good info dump, and it can be done really well. I think this movie had basically two info dumps. One was done really well, and one, in my opinion, was not as good as it could have been. The one done really well was Nick Fury and Peter Parker. When Nick Fury walks into Peter Parker's hotel room and he's being really serious and really heavy, and this is the world's in danger and we have to do this. Meanwhile, just classmates and teachers keep knocking on the door and the music stops when they do. And he's like trying to brush them all away. And then the heavy music and the deep info dump continues. And then it's interrupted. I thought that was wonderful. That was like perfect comic timing. The music was used brilliantly. It was all information.
Especially if you look back and think about the Nick Fury character and how that character would react to that person, those people knocking on the door.
We can talk about that next. I wanted to mention that second info dump that I did not think was done as well. Okay. And that was, and this is my opinion, but to me, after Peter Parker hands over Edith, the AI glasses that Tony Stark gave Peter Parker, and we finally see that Quentin Beck, that Mysterio, is actually a con man. At that point, he stands up and says, a toast. And the toast is a 10-minute toast where he then tells you the entire backstory of his scheme.
I think that was, I think it was good. It's just maybe could have been a little quicker.
Well, they were also introducing, his hench team or whatever.
They were introducing
and
the
fact
team.
that we've seen them for so many years.
Yeah. So to me, that was just a moment where kind of the momentum stopped so that he could tell his story.
Yeah.
And again, that's just me.
But. Yeah, that was awkward. And I'm not sure where that awkwardness came from, but it didn't stop the movie. It just slowed it down a little bit. And, it's a great movie because the story keeps compelling you to find out what's going to happen next. And what happens next is often a surprise.
Right. Right. What I would have loved to see is if instead of us finding about all the story, backstory of all the hench people and why he's doing what he's doing, all at one moment, I personally would have liked to see, like you said, have it be quicker and to have the rest of that information just peppered in the rest of the story as people find out more about who these guys are and what they're doing.
I think that would have been a little bit more disruptive to have like little flashbacks all throughout it. I was good with it just happening really quickly together.
I'm not sure about how that would work editing wise. I can see that it could be disruptive, but I don't know that it would have to be. And this is one where to really answer the question of where the issue is, we'd have to find out what the shooting script was.
Right. Sure.
And see, because their scripts are usually pretty thoroughly vetted for everything good, nothing bad.
Right.
And then it's just a question of executing it. But they also leave room for improvisation, which is, again, a gift from Favreau. Because all Marvel movies have reshoots.
Right.
And in Hollywood, that's usually considered a sign that there's something wrong. But actually in Marvel, it's a sign that the plan is coming together exactly as they wanted it to, that they knew that scenes would work and some scenes wouldn't work, but they don't know which ones until they're done shooting. So then they have a second shoot to fix them.
Right. And we were talking about how the trailer has scenes that aren't in the movie. And
I don't think they need to be in the movie because they were in the trailer. We've already seen them.
But that's so rare,
Not for Marvel in these movies.
Yeah, but the idea that we're giving you separate information in the trailer than is in the movie, that itself is kind of a real step forward in marketing, because usually marketing is full of spoilers and you have to avoid the trailers because they have spoilers.
I think it may have been, it may have happened before and I just don't remember, but my earliest recollection of that really being used is in Iron Man 3, where the trailers for Iron Man 3 really made it seem that Ben Kingsley's The Mandarin was the big bad and that he was behind everything. And then, of course, you find out later that he's a figurehead.
But you know that Marvel already likes to play with the previews. We had the Hulk fighting along in Infinity War.
And then they had to pay lots of money to get a fully rendered Hulk on those screens. So, they put the dollars into marketing that thing and faking people out.
So you were saying that was something that you didn't like. One of the things that kept kind of bugging me a little bit throughout the movie was the fact that the teachers just seemed like imbeciles.
Right. That
they were playing for comedy.
And as a teacher, I think that they could have done a little bit more with that, where they weren't just idiots.
Right.
That is like, wow, we really did get this upgrade. This is kind of unusual, but I'm just gonna
well, especially Julius.
Figure I'm lucky.
I agree with you, especially Julius, because you got the feeling that, the main teacher, who I completely forgot his name, was trying at least, and maybe misled by his own, ego. But Julius, his entire role was just to be there to say, I'm a science guy, but this is from witches. That was like his entire purpose. And it's like, come on, man. No, if you were a teacher, you'd be doing more than that.
Is it Brad that says, hey, we've been on this entire trip and what science have we done?
Mm-hmm.
And he's kind of making fun of the fact that, yes, they've been on this entire trip. And what was the purpose of the trip?
Yeah.
Because,
well, if you think of the class moments in the movie as sort of the Marvel version of a teen comedy, there is a long tradition in teen comedies of the adults all being absentee, silly, stupid. But I agree with you. I think it would have...
They could have done better.
Yeah.
They could have done it where they still, like I said, they could have been like, well, this does seem a little too good to be true, but I'm not going to look a gift horse in the mouth. I'm just going to roll with it.
Yes.
Right.
I get what you're saying, and I think there's two reasons that I can think of why they did that. In other words, I think there's two reasons why they decided to play it more for comedy. One is because that's what the teens want. They like teen comedies where the grown-ups are played as buffoons. There's a long tradition of that, and that's something that Marvel definitely does in each movie, is they take elements from some cinema genre and mash that up with the superheroes. And that's part of how they keep it fresh, is that they take different styles of movies and stay true to that style of movie and then combine it with superheroes. So you're always seeing some new combination of stuff that you haven't seen before. So that's one reason why they're having the adults play that way, is to have the sense. I mean, even Mysterio seems kind of like a comical villain, more so than the Vulture, who seemed genuinely like this guy, you don't want to mess with him.
Right.
Oh, Michael Keaton.
I was going to say, a lot of that is Michael Keaton's one of the better actors we have.
He's Batman.
Yes, that's true. And he brought that gravitas of, even when he's having a, quote, casual conversation, there's this subtext of menace.
Yeah.
And, Quentin does not have that subtext of menace, even though he does, mad scientist, mad villain stuff.
No, he's the con man.
And he's more of a con man. But the other reason is tonal shifts. They needed to shift to comedy to keep the emotional flow happening. And the adults are a clear way to allow for a moment of comic relief without breaking the character of the heroes.
Yeah, and I get that, and I can appreciate that. I just don't have to like the fact that they...
Yeah, fair enough. Fair enough.
I understand, but I think
I'm not the one being on. I'm not the one on stage.
Right.
I also see that there might have been a better way to do that, but the storyteller in me is saying, okay, but they needed somebody to do that job.
Right. Someone had to take the fall. And so they had the more slapsticky characters be the grown-ups.
I mean, I'm okay with them getting off the bus and the one teacher's trying to talk to Dimitri and he's just staring at him and he kind of like just gives up. So that's funny. But he's not an idiot doing that.
Right. Yeah, and at least the teachers are trying to protect the students and trying to give them.
And I did love that whole sequence where he accidentally sets the drone to. I mean, we got a lot of information on that bus ride. Drone to accidentally kill Brad, and he's trying to stop it. And the other kid takes his glasses, and the glasses fall, and eventually he's just like, "Oh, look!" And here's where I'm okay with this. Oh, look, it's a mountain goat, baby mountain goats. And everyone looks out the window. He pops up out of the bus, shoots the drone, and he's back down. And wow, I really like your hair. Your hairstyle is really nice. I mean, all of that entire bus sequence was just done very well.
Yeah, and shooting in a tight space like that is hard. In other words, having an extended scene on a bus or a subway or, in one room is very tricky cinematically because there's only so many places you can put the camera when it's in a confined space. So to keep it interesting is like really virtuoso filmmaking.
And you have him waking up in the, later on waking up in the jail cell because he fell asleep on the train.
He passed out.
Yes.
And it's just such a nice and helpful place.
Country. Yeah.
And even the guys that are in jail are like, no, well, we're still kind of supposed to be here, so we'll just kind of stay here. And the cop's like, well, you guys okay in there? Yeah, we're fine. And just so welcoming and so helpful and so friendly. Yeah.
Oh, and that was one of my favorite jailbreaks in any movie.
Because it was so casual. Yes. It wasn't like this big deal. It was just like, I got to get out of here. Click. And he walks out. And as an interesting aside, you know, in my other life.
Well, him looking at the cop wearing
his helmet. Yeah, that was great. In my other life as a pro audio guy, I've helped out a Dutch pro audio company called AudioEase quite a bit.
Oh, they're great.
And I would have to say, they are some of the absolute sweetest human beings you will ever meet. Awesome. So maybe it is like, maybe it's in the water in the Netherlands that just, it makes everybody super nice.
Yeah, I don't remember anyone being mean to me when I was in the Netherlands. I've been there once.
So if you're a listener from the Netherlands, we love you.
Yes, we do, and we'll be back as soon as we can afford it. Quick change of subject. This is one of Michael Giacchino's best soundtracks.
Yes.
Put it, just how it plays in the film, up with his top 5 scores. I have to listen to it, on its own, but his music is really thematic.
Yes.
And thematic in a melodic way that, to me, is part of the heart and soul of cinema. It's pictures plus music. People don't have to talk to have an awesome scene or even a whole awesome movie, but there needs to be some melodic theme that binds you to the characters. And he's doing that in Far From Home more so than any other Marvel movie except the Avengers.
There's a very clear theme for the Avengers, which I think really captures their heroism in a wonderful way.
Yes.
And I would agree with you about the soundtrack. They say that the best soundtracks you don't notice. I don't think that's true.
A myth.
I think the best soundtracks are ones that the emotion, the music portrays is the emotion that you're feeling, and it helps heighten it and helps you transcend. It helps your catharsis as you're seeing the scene. I think that's what a great soundtrack can do.
It seemed like there was a time, and I'm trying to think if it was when we were with Nick Fury, that the music kind of got funky.
Yes, it did.
And it was like, wow, this is kind of unexpected, but it fits the scene and the character very well.
Yes. The pop music elements in modern soundtracks are now incorporated into the score better than they have been in decades. And
well, I think this was part of the score.
Yeah.
It wasn't.
No, I mean, taking elements of pop music and repurposing them as underscore.
Right.
In addition to the soundtrack of pop songs. Another movie that did a terrific job of that, and I have heard that score's Pemberton's score for Into the Spider-Verse. Where,
yes.
Oh, yeah.
That had
that's one of my favorite scores
scoring,
of all time,
but it also had, funky and EDM stuff that transitioned perfectly with the actual pop songs.
Right.
And to an extent that same kind of magic with a different composer is happening.
Yeah.
I remember at the very beginning of the movie, I think I turned to you and I said, wow, this is really kind of mellow music for right now for the opening. And it really just kind of set the stage that it's not happy-go-lucky right now.
Right. Yeah, I think the best Marvel movies take some risks, and you think, well, it's a huge budget movie, they're not going to take that many risks, and maybe they don't, but they do take some. And I think one of them was starting the movie on a memoriam for Tony Stark and the Lost Avengers. I mean, here's this, people walk into the theater with their popcorn and their soda, and they're ready to have a good time and have an exciting time. And they sit down, and the first thing on the screen is emotional music, and Tony Stark is dead. You know,
but, and that's played serious, like people are grieving.
Yeah. And I think that was a bit of a risk because you're starting your adventure action comedy on a really somber note. But I think it was perfect.
I think you're also, the other thing is that, I don't know if this happened with either one of you. Towards the end, it was like, yeah, you know.
That's right. No Stan cameo.
Yes, that's right.
We're out of Stanley cameos now.
Well, he has dozens of cameos, not just in the MCU, but all over the place.
Right.
And he actually became a pretty good actor. And I was fortunate enough to be on set when he was doing a on-screen cameo for a movie. And he really took his acting pretty seriously.
Oh, yeah, no, there's
not a goof for him.
The end of Endgame.
In the re-released Endgame, there's a tribute to Stan. And
it's all his cameos.
Yeah, and the tribute consisted of not just viewing his cameos, but the images of him behind the scenes, getting in costume, learning the lines, doing it. Mm-hmm. And you could tell that he was both just thrilled and tickled pink that at this age, at that point in his career, he had this wonderful opportunity to be in movies that he never thought would have even possibly been made 50 years before. But also that it meant something to him. And it was beautiful to see.
Yes, it is. Well, Stan was an amazing person, and his legacy is going to live on in a way that really is comparable to someone like Conan Doyle or to Edgar Rice Burroughs, or right. These people whose characters are constantly in the cultural.
And I don't know. Maybe discussion. They snuck a Stan in there that we didn't see.
Maybe there's a picture on a wall or something that we'll find out later.
Yes. Well, I have heard from people who've already seen it twice that our backgrounds have tributes to many of the Marvel comic artists. So, there might be a Stan one in there, but I was too busy figuring out what's happening next, and that Spidey versus the drones. That was an incredible action sequence.
Yeah. And one of the things I'm certainly not a student of film, but I know enough about what makes a good action scene to know that one of the most important things is geography.
Yes.
That you need, if you just get quick cuts, that can be visceral, but ultimately you don't really gain anything because you don't know where anyone is, what's going on. It's just, there's quick movements happening and I'm supposed to be excited, but I'm really kind of more confused. But I thought this one did a great job of showing you the entire geography of where all the drones were, where Spider-Man was in context of all the drones. They did a wonderful job of giving you that quick, exciting action and the full lay of the land. And that's not easy to do, but they did it well.
Oh, yes. I'm sure that going back through, it'll be amazing to see how much information they're giving us by showing the close-ups, the medium shots, the master shots, cutting away to the villain, cutting away to the supporting characters.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we've covered it. Is there any last-minute words?
Okay. A couple of overall things. First, this, in my humble opinion, is probably the best Spider-Man movie.
Okay.
And I love so many of them and so many parts of them. But this one, the emotion was at a peak. The acting was at a peak. The visual effects were at a peak. The consequences of what happened in this movie are it raises the stakes considerably.
Yeah. Okay, so I like that his friend got together with Betty.
Yes,
and then
saw that
and then it was
and then
it was done, but there was no animosity. they're still, hey, good friends. Okay, yeah. Also, I look forward to seeing it again just to watch Samuel L. Jackson and really those subtle details that it's not really him.
Yes.
Because during the movie, it was bothering me from like almost the beginning that there just something wasn't quite right. And I thought maybe this is because of the blip or the snap or whatever. And then at the end, I was like, oh, well, yeah, that definitely makes sense. But to watch that again, to see how Samuel L. Jackson plays being Nick Fury, but not quite being Nick Fury.
Yes.
And maybe those people
also Kobe,
right.
But also the other thing to think of is because we went back and watched Endgame last night, and for the by the time this airs, we watched Endgame right before seeing Spider-Man: Far From Home, and the end scene where I'd seen someone say, "Oh, I think that's Ben Mendelsohn in the school there."
Yes.
At the end of Endgame,
it is.
It's like, well, it kind of looks like him. So whether or not it really was, and just to know that he's still involved in it was kind of just lovely because he did an awesome job in Captain Marvel.
Yeah, I was going to say, Ben Mendelsohn is not that well known to American audiences, but he's a great character actor. Really good actor.
He does a lot. I mean, from Ready Player One to just other little bits, and sometimes he's the good guy, sometimes he's the bad guy, but he's not put in any one box.
So it's great to see him getting recurring roles in the Marvel universe and
it's good to see him here because that means that we'll probably be seeing him later on.
Right.
Well, now everybody wants to be in the MCU. I mean,
sure.
We're going to have Angelina Jolie,
right?
And I'm pretty sure that we're going to get Nicole Kidman,
and because of all of the Keanu,
she wasn't happy enough to be in Aquaman, huh? Now she has to switch to the Marvel universe.
I think it's because, like any actor, they want a really good part.
Even
the part that she got in Aquaman was pretty good, but I'll bet you that that Kevin Feige would make sure that she got a Oscar-worthy role.
Well, and it was in last year. It was great that the Academy acknowledged Black Panther.
Yes,
and it would be really nice. All these stars, these really high-end stars, are like, this is where it is. This is what I want to do. And it would be really nice to see the Academy Awards actually acknowledge that, hey, it might be a superhero movie, but there can still be some really just incredible acting. I would really like to see Robert Downey Jr. because he just does a phenomenal job.
Yeah, yes. I don't know how these things are determined. I don't know if the prejudice against genre movies would just automatically knock him out of contention. I don't know if there just will be 5 other movies.
Well, that's like one.
Well, yeah,
that
posthumously. Yeah, we talked about that one.
I think his death actually had.
Yes.
I mean, I think if he would have,
he deserved it.
Yeah,
he still deserved it.
He did deserve it, but I think if he would have lived, they would have waited to give it to a more serious, dramatic role. But since he didn't,
I don't think you can get any more serious and dramatic than his role. So that was another discussion that we've had before, and you brought up Into the Spider-Verse earlier. You have Into the Spider-Verse that the Academy did not even acknowledge 2 songs that were original songs for that movie.
Yeah, and Sunflower is a great song.
And Sunflower is incredible, and it was on
hit. So I mean, it's not like no one ever heard the song before.
And the Academy didn't even acknowledge it.
Right. What's Up Danger was another pop hit that was, a really good hip hop style song, and yeah.
So it would just be nice for them to actually acknowledge that just because something is a genre movie like that doesn't mean that it can't be. They did acknowledge The Shape of Water, which was
they did.
But
this could be a whole other wonderful discussion of how meritocracies are often not.
We could do a whole panel on movies that should have been acknowledged for just really incredible actors or music or any of that.
Yeah.
But
back to Spider-Man Far From Home.
Back to Spider-Man Far From Home. I think we've covered it. Thank you, Golden. Thank you, David.
You're welcome.
You're welcome. And thank you to everyone who's listening. We love you and we'd love to hear from you.
We definitely would. Thank you. And that's it for this episode. You can find the show notes at theomegabeam.com/46. If you like this episode, please leave a review in the Apple Podcasts app or wherever you listen to podcasts. If you have any comments or questions, suggestions, please drop us a line at info@theomegabeam.com. Be good to yourselves and each other, and we'll catch you next time.